We are now less than a week away from Misfits 20. Anthony Taylor is stepping in for his first main event opportunity on Misfits against Darren Till. And once again, we will be live to do a watch party for this fight on the 18th of January. Now yes, the background is different today. I'm at home for the holidays, which is also why I've not been posting videos. I'm sorry. I know I said I was back, and then I left again. But here we are. Now, before we talk about this main event, I do want to shout out this co-main. One of my inspirations for coming on here and making videos, the man Wade Plem, is going to be fighting Mosiah Pinder, or Messiah Warrior, whatever his name is. Now, it was meant to be HS Tiki Toki in front of him for this one, but I don't think it matters. I have Wade by however he wants, really. I've seen some footage of him on pads doing some light sparring with Tristan Ham, and I think the way he's improved over just these last couple months is really impressive. It gives me a lot of comfort knowing that I think he's going to do a good job in there. I will be fully biased for this one. I have Wade winning. Anyway, on to this main event. It was meant to be Tommy Fury versus Darren Till, and you might have seen in one of my previous videos reacting to the press conference, I was very excited for this fight, and I thought Darren Till was doing a very good job handling Tommy and John. He was getting in their heads, he was getting them to react to what he was saying. I thought it was going to lead to a very good fight. I thought the mental upper hand in the build-up would be a good motivating factor for both guys. I think the way Darren handled the press conference was going to be a great motivating factor on both sides. The Fury's out of anger, Darren out of, okay, I've got under his skin here. Let's do some work. And I think that was going to help Darren, as he would have been the underdog for this fight. But I guess now, Tommy didn't want to be kicked in the face, and we've got Anthony Taylor instead. And actually, from a technical standpoint, I feel like this is a more competitive fight. Now, don't get me wrong, if we're going to go based on their MMA resumes, then Darren Till wins every day of the week. He contested the best in his weight class in the UFC, and his last loss was against the current champion, Dracus du Plessis, and he was doing a decent job at the beginning, and then he just got tied up in the grappling exchanges. Whereas on the other hand, Anthony Taylor had a few fights in Bellator, but it was nothing really to write home about. But this isn't an MMA fight, this will be boxing, and if we talk specifically boxing, then I would give Anthony Taylor the upper hand, just because he's had more fights and more experience in boxing than Darren Till. So in recent memory, Anthony Taylor has had 2 losses against professional boxers, Tommy Fury and Idris Virgo, and they were both decision losses, clear decision losses, but he wasn't able to get knocked out. He was able to stand his ground and at least lose the decision. Whereas Darren Till has only transitioned into boxing recently. He had one fight on Social Knockout against some guy whose name I don't know, and then halfway through the fight, the guy quits and then tries to attack Darren after the fight's already over. Yeah, I don't know what really happened there. But here he is, slated to make his Misfits debut, and the one upper hand we can give Darren Till on his boxing experience is his alleged sparring partners. He says he's sparred Tyson Fury in boxing before. Now, I'm not going to put much stock in his sparring unless I can see footage of it and I can see that he's doing well. So I think for the most part, Darren Till is a bit of a mystery man in this fight. But we can acknowledge that he was one of the better strikers of his time in the UFC, and he'll be able to translate that quite nicely into boxing. And with the photos we've seen since that media day a couple months ago, we can see that Darren Till's going to be coming in shape. And not just in shape, Darren Till is going to have a big weight advantage against Anthony Taylor, who has most recently been fighting at light heavyweight. And with Darren Till recently saying that the fight's going to be at 93 kilograms, that's a big disadvantage on the side of Anthony Taylor. However, I've also been hearing that this fight's going to be at a catch weight of 195 on the upper end of cruiserweight, but we're really just going to have to find out on fight week. Now, a big factor in this equation is the last few fights that Anthony Taylor has had. If you take AT's last 2 fights out of this equation, then I would probably tell you that Darren Till will win. And this is because fights like King Kenny, Salt Pappy, AT was able to get in those grappling exchanges, tie the fighters up and just hit them in the clinch, push them away, and then on the way back in he would land a big shot and then keep tapping them in the grappling exchanges. With the Salt Pappy fight in particular, which I was there for, only having 3 rounds, he was able to get away with this quite easily. And if you look at the slow-mo replays, you can see AT hitting Salt Pappy with a big shot on the way in, as AT was able to slip Salt Pappy's southpaw jab and lead in with that right hand counter, which he could then follow up on, which would lead to clinch exchanges where he could lean on Salt Pappy against the ropes and hit him to the body and to the head. And he was able to grind out a short 3-round decision and be on his way. If he was going to try and do that against Darren Till, who's also a mixed martial artist, I think he would have been educated enough to see that lead right coming, be able to get out of the way, and then should the grappling exchanges happen in the clinch, I think Darren would be able to get that separation. I think Darren would be able to maneuver the clinch, get that separation, and land the shots that he needs to. However, Anthony Taylor's more recent performances have shown a very different style, because with the advice of David Dynamite Lopez and his team, AT has been able to utilize a better, clean boxing style, which he uses to throw clean combinations and go for the knockout, with his last 2 performances being stoppages. And these performances in particular showed him being able to push his opponents back, not with the clinch, not with short blitzes, but with continuous attacks of combination punches that can take away the composure of his opponents, leading them to throw silly shots that he can then counter and sit them down with. His performance against a counter puncher like Gabriel Silva in particular showed that AT was able to be continuously aggressive, and then he was still composed enough to take a step back and throw the counter right hand when he saw something coming back at him. So with an aggressive fighter like Darren Till, I think we could really be in for a very good fight. I think we could see an 8-round contest where both fighters have moments of success, both fighters could maybe touch the canvas, but the better man will win a decision. I think this main event could be one of the best main events in Misfits so far. I think the winner of this fight could be put on a high enough pedestal to earn themselves some really big fights in the future against really credible opponents that could headline pay-per-view card maybe at the end of the year. So who do I have winning this fight? Well, if you were to ask me based on general combat experience, you'd have to give this to Darren Till, based on the opponents he's had in the UFC, his experience, and his striking pedigree. But you'd also have to consider the weight disadvantage that Anthony Taylor's going to have, and Darren Till might be able to use his weight advantage to outmuscle Anthony Taylor in the clinch and maneuver him back into a corner where he can then separate and continue his work. But then if we consider Anthony Taylor's boxing performances, the amount of experience in strictly the sweet science, then I'd be tempted to say that Anthony Taylor wins this fight based on his last couple performances, really aggressive combinations and knockout wins. And I think Darren Till would need to bring his best to be able to outmaneuver Anthony Taylor, parry his shots, get out of the way, change the angle and counter. And will he be able to carry over his stand-up game from the UFC without the leg kicks, without the elbows, and still be able to do this easily? This is what we'll have to find out next weekend. But if I had to give a prediction, I'd probably give it to Anthony Taylor. I've bet against Anthony Taylor too many times, and I'm not willing to do it again. I think he's going to get this. Just based on the mindset, the fact that he's never going to say no to a fight, and his last 2 performances have been really entertaining and really impressive. So I do think it might come down to who wants it more, and I think Anthony Taylor wants it more. And if you want to know what gives me that impression, I'd highly recommend watching AT's interview on the Real and Will's channel. I think it really shows his backstory and what makes him who he is and why he's so determined to be the best fighter he can possibly be. And after watching it, it's hard not to be a fan of him, even if some of his performances in the past were less than impressive. So that's my prediction for this fight. Let me know in the comments what you think, and remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And one last reminder, I will be live for Misfits 20 on Saturday, so feel free to tune in and we'll have a good time. Thank you for watching, everyone.